I am Dr. Pradeep Bhawal, dealing with the subject of EU ETS. In part 1 and part 2, we discussed about the impact of greenhouse gas. We discussed about the concept of EU ETS, and also we discussed about the cap and trade mechanism. In this video, we shall be discussing about the concept of carbon leakage and benchmark allowances. Let us see the questions today. Number 1, what is carbon leakage? Number 2, how to tackle this issue of carbon leakage? Number 3, how much compensation to give? Number 4, what is the balance made between the trade and the emission reduction? Let's go ahead. What is carbon leakage? To explain the carbon leakage, first of all, I wanted to align the concept of leakage. I used a simple diagram to explain the leakage. So here is a container and we have some liquid and there is a small hole. So the liquids are dropping. Now the two things can happen. One is the water is coming out or the liquid is coming out because we want. Then it's called the flow. Second thing is that we don't want, and then it is called the leakage. Now once the leakage takes place, we can take two different actions. One is either eliminate the leakage, completely stop the leakage of flow, or we can try to reduce the impact of the leakage as much as possible. Now, what is the carbon leakage in terms of EU ETS? Let us see in left side there is a EU ETS zone where all the industries are following, all the emitting industries are following the EU ETS rule. That means they are paying some sort of carbon tax. Now, there is another group of industry, maybe for comparison, let us see exactly the same industry, but located outside the EU ETS zone, that is no carbon tax zone. Then what happens? The material which is produced in the EU ETS zone and going to the no carbon zone, then they are paying the production cost plus they are also paying the carbon tax. Now similarly, if it goes from other side, that means the material produced in a no carbon tax zone and goes to the EU ETS zone, they don't pay the tax. Here you can see the carbon tax is the differentiating factor between these two zones. So this factor we call as a carbon leakage. Why we call as a carbon leakage? Because these guys are not paying tax. So it is basically a carbon tax leakage, which is called as a carbon leakage. And you can see that physically there is no leakage as such. These industries also, if you see, they are identical. They are also emitting the CO2. They are also emitting the CO2 and there is no difference. So we are talking about the leakage of carbon tax. That means these producers are able to make a trade in this region without paying the carbon tax. So let's go ahead. Now, how to tackle the issue of carbon leakage? Now we know what is carbon leakage, that means the tax. Then how can we deal with these situations? Now before that, let us discuss about some of the issues or the points. There is no international uniform law and standard of carbon tax, and there is no equal playing field. That means somebody is paying big tax, somebody is paying, some region is paying less tax, some region is paying no tax. That means the transfer of material will have a huge amount of carbon tax imbalance. Now, EU producers are becoming less competitive for export because their cost is going higher. The imported goods have more competitiveness compared to the internal produced good. Internal means the EU produced goods. And the reason is simple, they are not paying carbon tax, so they are cheaper. Due to that, there can be a risk that some of the European Union companies, they can think of shifting their production facility to the non-carbon tax zone to reduce their carbon cost or the carbon tax. So in that case, there will be a leakage of industry. In that case, you can say also a second definition of leakage of carbon emission. That means the industries will be shifting from EU region to another region, but it is not going to help anything to our climate because the emission remains in the climate, only the tax regime changes, which is not really desirable as far as the climate action is concerned or fighting against the climate change is concerned. And let us see what can be the possible solutions. As we have shown you the the leakage slides, we can take two actions. Either we can stop leakage completely, or we can try to take some action by which the impact of leakage is reduced. Now here the attempt is to reduce the impact of the leakage as much as possible, because we cannot completely stop the trade, because the global trade is fully connected. So we need to take some action by which the leakage is as minimum as possible. So there is one way to do something, some action at our end and some action at the other end. But the other end we have very little control, so all actions to be initially taken at our end. So what we can do, we can provide compensation to the carbon leakage product. That means the products which are traded widely internationally, we can compensate or we can reduce the carbon tax to the producer of the EU region, so that they are more competitive as far as the global business is concerned. Now question is that how we can able to compensate, what is the mechanism of compensation. Now what we do, that we create first of all we create a list of products and identified as carbon leakage product. That means very widely traded internationally and also having a significant amount of emissions. Now effectively reduce the carbon tax. Now coming to the next question, that how much compensation to give and what is the compensation mechanism. Now to do the compensation, first a benchmarking exercise was done. That means emission data was collected from all the producers of Europe for the products which are identified as a carbon leakage product. Now top 10 lowest emission index was chosen, and by averaging the emission index, a benchmark emission was chosen. Now compensation in terms of free allowances were given to the carbon leakage product based on these benchmark indexes. So there is a scientific methodology to find a quantity which to be compensated, and then this is compensated by providing the free allowances to the carbon leakage industry or carbon leakage products. Now the last is that how is the balance made between trade and emission reduction. So immediate question comes that if we are compensating, then we are actually not forcing or not encouraging the industries to reduce their emission. Let us see how this balance is being made. Now by the process of benchmarking of low emission index was chosen. That means we were not very loose in terms of choosing the benchmark. We have chosen a very tight benchmark by providing the best in class production facility, and then compensation was good to enable the European producer, so that this compensation is enabling the European producer to be competitive in global business. But since it's the best in class, so most of the producer was emitting higher amount, they shall be encouraged to reduce their emission as there is a financial impact. That means the companies and industry which are not efficient, they will be now forced to be efficient, at least to catch up best in class in the Europe. Now link of this directive and the list of carbon leakage industries are given in the description of this video. Let's go forward and summarize. In this presentation we explain carbon leakage, benchmarking and free allowances, and how to tackle the issue of carbon leakage and trade. Please remember that this video is aimed for the non-professionals, basically who doesn't understand or doesn't know anything about the EU ETS. So I try to make it as simple as possible. The subject is quite complex, and possibly in coming videos we will be discussing about this in more detail. Now in the next video we will be talking about the carbon offset. There is a concept which all of us should know, and CBAM, cross-border adjustment mechanism. So for any question, please don't hesitate to write to me. My email is given below, and I will say that let's make our art better. Thank you very much for your attention and time, and see you soon.